Hello everybody, my name is Jude from thisbusinessoftherapy.com, and I'm here today in this short video to speak to you a little bit about the important journey from working for somebody else to being self-employed. And I hope you enjoy this video, and I have an exciting announcement at the end of it, so please keep watching. If you've listened to me at all or read anything that I've written over the last 8 years, thereabouts, you'll know that I talk a lot about how therapy school doesn't teach you how to make a living from your qualification. And, you know, in fairness to therapy schools, that's not their job. They're in the business of education, not in the business of supporting us into the workplace. But I suppose what I'm conscious of is that we go through this process of qualifying as a therapist, and then it's like coming off the end of a conveyor belt. You've spent all of this money, all of this time, and not to mention what goes on inside and the internal turmoil that goes on, getting this qualification, and then what do you do with it? And you know, I suppose for myself, I had always had a clear intention to go into practice self-employed, but I had never really thought about what the other options were. And there are a few options. I mean, you can get a job as a therapist and somebody else pays you to do that job just the same as any other job. You can also use your therapist qualification to complement some other work that you're doing, such as nursing or social care or even teaching. And if you're in the lucky position of not needing to make an income out of your practice, you could offer your services in a voluntary capacity. But I'm in the main talking to those people who need to earn a living from their work, or who want to earn a living from their work. Could be either. And my question to you is, what do you want? What do you want? Do you want to be self-employed, or do you want to work for somebody else? Because self-employed is not for the faint-hearted. It's not an easy equivalent to working for somebody else. It's not for the maybes. You need to have some sort of a clear intention that you do want to be self-employed, because that commitment will support you on the journey. You've probably heard me talking or seen me writing about the various stages that a practice goes through, and I often liken it to the stages of development of a human being. We start out as babies, we grow into children and adolescents, and then ultimately we progress on to being adults, or at least some of us do, and some of us still have a lot of child inside us, like me. So as a baby practice, very like a human baby, needs a lot of support, is very vulnerable, can't provide for itself, needs lots of things actually, and I will talk a little bit more about that in another video. But yeah, very, very fragile in terms of income. You know, income may be sporadic, it may not be there at all for periods of time. There may be significant expenses in the initial startup phases. Things may be very uncertain. There may be, needs a lot of support. Just like a young human child needs a lot of support. And as the child progresses into adolescence, for example, they look a bit more like an adult, and they might have the body of an adult, but we all know that they still need a lot of support, and they still need a lot of holding, a lot of encouragement, and you know, they can be a bit all over the place, really. A practice is a bit like that as well, when it sort of gets to that stage where, you know, maybe getting just about enough income, things are beginning to take shape, reputation is beginning to form, the shape and size and colour and texture of the practice are beginning to emerge, but it still needs the practitioner to be there focused on supporting and building that practice. And, you know, in terms of income, yeah, there may be enough to pay the expenses, but there won't be enough to go on a lovely holiday to Mauritius, or to put money into your pension fund, for example. Then you get to the adult stage, and a bit like an adult person, you know, generally able to look after themselves, you know what the identity is. They, in income terms, there would be not just enough to scrape by the expenses, but that you'd feel you could rely on the income coming in, that you could trust the income, that there's enough income there to pay the expenses. And so they're very similar in that way. A practice and a child are very similar in that way. And I suppose what's different between a practice and a child is that a child has a family environment to hold it, even if that environment is not ideal, even if that environment is not good at all. There is still an environment to hold that child. And, you know, there are parents and siblings, and that provides some stability. A child, in this day and age anyway, there are expected milestones, you know, so expected health milestones, expected education milestones. At this age, a child should be able to do that. At this age, a child should be able to do that. At this age, a child should, you know, not be having coughs and sniffs and colds and flu every second day. They should be able to, you know, perform these sort of tasks. They should have grown to this height and weight and so on. A child might also need stimulation from outside, from creche, or from play dates, or from school, or, you know, a diversity of people. A child will come into contact with a diversity of people, and that will also encourage the child to grow. Compare that to a practice. A practice needs those things too. A practice needs an environment to hold it. A practice needs to have various milestones set down for it, so as the practitioner knows, if I haven't got to there, something's not working quite right. I need to, you know, maybe ramp up there, or do a bit more there, or have a look at this. On the other hand, if you think about progressions that you might have done as an adult, say you went to college, or most recently qualified as a therapist, those supports are there in those environments. So in therapy school, there's a syllabus, there's a curriculum, there are teachers, there are fellow students, there are assignments, there's reading, there's lectures, there's group processes, and all of that. And all of that supports the trainee therapist, and of course the personal therapy that they would usually have to do as well. Even when you think about working for somebody else, and an adolescent goes out into the world and they get their first job, there's a stability there, there's an organisation, there's fellow workers, there's an ethos in the environment, there's a brand of the product or service that they're producing, and so on. And in the same way, there are supports available to the person, the young person starting their work life. I know that in your practices your client is well supported. I know that you probably invest all of your time and energy in your clients and in your client supports. You go to supervision, you read widely, you're involved in continuous professional development, and so on. But my question to you is this: how well supported is your practice? Does your practice get any support at all? Do you provide structures for your practice? Do you provide timelines for your practice or expectations for your practice? Do you provide, do you get the information that you might need to support your practice? Do you learn about the business side of things? Do you provide your practice with stimulation? Or do you keep things very small, very net, and never step outside your comfort zone? So I hope I've given you something to think about in terms of your journey to being self-employed. I hope you've enjoyed this and maybe learned something from it. In my next video, I'm going to look at how does growth happen? How do we work through those phases from baby practice to child and adolescent practice to adult practice? How does that growth take place? And what needs to be there in the environment? I'll expand on that a bit more. So if you have any comments or questions, I'd be delighted to hear from you. You'll find a comment box or my email address there. And if you're interested in giving some serious support to your practice, I am delighted to announce that I'm going to be doing a brand new workshop on the 19th of October in Navan, which is going to be completely devoted to the inner journey from being employed by somebody else to being self-employed. And I hope you'll be there. I look forward to meeting from you. Thank you. Bye-bye.